the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers, what a fun football game that was on Monday Night Football in Santa Clara. And once again, as we were talking yesterday, the proverbial nothing left to play, just playing for pride, and a very prideful bunch in the defending NFC champs. They have basically one more month to say they're the defending NFC champs. And somebody's going to go to the Super Bowl from this conference. It's not going to be them. And the team that they prevented from going to the Super Bowl from that conference last year in that very building in the NFC Championship game was coming into their house with a big, fat Dan Campbell-sized chip on their shoulder. And the chip on their shoulder is nobody believes in them. They are playing that card. They are playing that card. Even with now 14 wins, they're going to be playing that card. Nobody believes in them, because everybody believes they don't have enough players on defense to win the Super Bowl, let alone get there, let alone potentially even be the top seed in the conference, let alone even be the NFC North champs in their own division. People think that they're not going to be able to pull that off because in come the Minnesota Vikings next week, and yada, yada, yada. The Lions put up 40 points anyway. They got just enough on defense. Kirby Joseph with 2 interceptions, very key picks from that remaining healthy defensive player that you've heard of, basically, on Detroit. And guys, I think that is the formula here. This is the formula for the Detroit Lions, is just get Jared Goff cooking, get Jahmyr Gibbs cooking, get the ball to all of their wideouts. Have Ben Johnson get in his bag like a nice little hook and ladder from Amon-Ra St. Brown to Jamison Williams. Get that stuff going, and then get just enough of a defensive stop here and there and win basically 40-30. That's basically what I think is their formula right now. And last night, it worked. And to the point that I'm making here, it was the 5th game for the Lions this year. Last night, 5th game for the Lions, in which they've scored 40 or more points without a turnover. That's the key as well. They don't make the mistakes. You make the mistakes. They don't give it away. They try and take it away with as many remaining players that we've heard of on defense doing it. The Lions are averaging 33.3 points per game. That would set a new franchise record. And last night they set a new franchise record for wins in a season. But those 5 games that I mentioned of 40 or more points without a turnover, that is the most by any team in a single season in the history of the NFL. And the Lions have scored 40 or more points in 6 games this year. That leads the NFL. One of those games they actually did have a turnover, so that doesn't count in this regard. They are doing exactly what they need to do, and certainly doing it on the road, which is interesting that this team is 8-0 on the road now, and we're talking about how crucial it is for them to get that bye week and to get those games coming through Ford Field where all the fans are going crazy and things of that nature. It's kind of crazy, guys. And then I'll just open the floor to you. That this team is 8-0. It's the only team in the NFL that is undefeated on the road. And yet the home field advantage for them is considered crucial, I believe, in the fact that for everything that we've been talking about at the Lions this season, feeling destined, looking destined, having Jared Goff, by the way, since his 5-interception game, everyone's wondering how he would bounce back from that 5-interception game that they still won in Houston. How would he bounce back from that? Well, how does 19 touchdowns and 1 interception since that game sound to you? He is being the MVP quarterback that they need, because again, they need to win 40-30 right now. At least that's how it looks, and not turn it over and be efficient with the football. Once again, he started 9 for 9 last night on a Monday Night Football game in which he went 18 for 18 in his last appearance there. But it's interesting that we're all talking about how important it is for this team to have home field advantage, but they're just as good as ever on the road. It's just that if they wind up on the road, if they wind up being that 5 seed going to, we assume, Tampa, and then having to continue to play these games on the road, it would be maybe the toughest mental blow I've seen delivered to a team, to have 14 wins and have everybody talking about how destined they are, and having the MVP quarterback and having everything go through Detroit as everyone was assuming the entire year, unless Philadelphia could catch them. And it's the Vikings who have a chance to actually catch them. And then Detroit would not even win their division with 14 wins and go on the road. I know they're a mentally tough team. You can't be 8-0 on the road without being mentally tough.
Right.
But that one, when you're thinking, we're going to get a bye, we're going to get everything going through our house in Detroit, we're only going to need to have to play 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. No. Pack your bags. You got to play 3 on the road to get there. Most likely 3 on the road.
But doesn't it feel like that's the type of stuff that Dan Campbell would thrive on, and he would be able to spin that into the ultimate positive, like we saw from the Eagles a few years ago, the underdogs and the dog masks and all that? It feels like Dan Campbell would play right into that.
But they were still the 1 seed that year. And, and they did play that card. And, yeah, Campbell could play it. I just find this is what I would just consider ironic. The reality of the situation is we've got a big, huge ass football game next week.
Yeah.
And both teams are 14-win teams, and both teams have a chance. Usually you don't want that last game of the year to be a game in which both teams have already clinched the playoffs. But it is a huge difference between being the 1 seed and getting to the playoffs as the 1 seed and having everybody come through your house and winning the division, or having to go on the road to start just the very next week. That's going to be huge. And to your point, Dan Campbell's already using it to his advantage, and he is fired up for it. Check it out.
This is what you're in it for, man. I mean, this is ultimately, this is it. I mean, you couldn't write a better scenario. Like, you couldn't come up with this. The fact that both teams are sitting at 14-2. And it's for the division and the 1 seed. It just doesn't get any better than this. Like, this is fairy tale stuff. And so, I mean, it speaks for itself. Our guys are excited. I told you the hardest thing was not to overlook what we were getting ready to do today. And now that it's here, I'm going to spend the next 6 hours on the plane. Like, this is great, man. This is it's as good as it gets, and so we're looking forward to this.
It is as good as it gets, and it's just amazing, the Lions' season-long storyline arc, right, guys? It really is amazing how it started against the Rams, same team that they started their playoff journey against last year. That game goes into overtime. They win that one. Then they lose to the next week to the Bucs, the team that they bounced after they bounced the Rams in last year's playoffs. And then they lose that game, and we're all wondering what type of team the Lions can be. And they rip off all those wins in a row, only to get boat raced at home by the Buffalo Bills and get, a big, huge blast of reality in their grill, not just in that game, but in all the games that they were winning, having one defensive player after another get IR'd, from Aiden Hutchinson. They're still hoping that Anzalone can come back, just to name a couple. And yet here we are. They're a 14-win team. They have the most wins in the history of this franchise in a single season. They are the best Detroit Lions team ever. You can make that case, and I know that there's a lot of folks out there who remember Bobby Lane, et cetera, et cetera. But they have a chance to be really special, or have a Vikings axe just put right in their chest at the very end, like the Overlook Hotel. And it's just going to be on. But what we saw last night, essentially, just to wrap up the Lions conversation, what we saw last night is the reality. They're going to have to win by putting a ton of points on the board. They're going to have to get a defensive stop here and there. They're going to have to get a little bit lucky. My guy from Michigan, Jake Moody, yet another shaky night kicking the football. If he had made all of his kicks, I think the 49ers would have had a much better chance to win. They would have had more points than the Lions by the end of the game, right, or by the end of regulation, or as it was coming down to it. All that said, the Lions, that's the formula. Jared Goff playing on point, Jahmyr Gibbs doing his thing, Sonic doing his things. Hopefully they get Knuckles back. Amon-Ra St. Brown doing his thing. The rest of those receivers doing their thing. The line doing their thing to protect. And then the defense just doing just enough. Will that be enough to win the NFC, let alone the Super Bowl? What a question. It is awesome. And it is a great feature of the 2024 season.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.